Welcome to the Misophonia podcast. This is season 7, episode 30. My name's Adil Ahmad, and I have Misophonia. This week I'm talking to Rachel, a barista and bartender in Philadelphia. We talk about her early experiences with the Misophonia, coming at a young age, which was also a very turbulent and volatile time at her home. We talk about how she's been unpacking a lot of this recently during therapy, and she also talks about her college experience and coping strategies she developed, like breathing and meditation practices, as well as setting boundaries in relationships with her family. She highlights the importance of understanding and support from loved ones and the challenges of navigating partner relationships with misophonia. I thought this was a great conversation, really highlights a common theme, which is early childhood experiences, especially at home, the tension and the complex trauma that can affect and perhaps spark misophonia. After the show, let me know what you think. You can reach out by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or hit me up on Instagram or Facebook at Misophonia Podcast. And by the way, of course, please do head over and leave a quick rating or a review wherever you listen to the show. It really helps move us up in the algorithms if people are looking for information about misophonia. A few of my usual announcements. Of course, thanks for the incredible ongoing support from our Patreon supporters. If you feel like contributing, you can read all about the various levels at patreon.com/Misophonia Podcast. This episode is also sponsored by the personal journaling app I developed called Basil, Basal. Basil provides AI-powered insights into your journal entries and guides you with new writing prompts daily based on those insights. You can even explore many different therapy approaches and modalities, and it's available on iOS and Android. Check the show notes or go to hellobasal.com. All right, now here's my conversation with Rachel. Rachel, welcome to the podcast. Good to have you.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So, do you want to tell us, where you are, kind of what you do, that kind of stuff?
Sure. I live in Philadelphia, and I am a bartender. Previously, I have been a coffee roaster, and I used to sing classical music.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
I dabble in a few things.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe we might as well start kind of right with what you're doing, like barista, bar, your environment, which, can be good and bad. It can be background noise, but then there could also be patrons that you probably want to rather not have at your establishment. What's life like?
It's quite true. I feel like it's interesting that I chose to be in food service, just because of misophonia very much affecting my life. And there are definitely some times where I feel affected and I can't do anything about it. In coffee roasting, there's something that we do called cupping, where we will taste multiple coffees, and in it, when you're tasting the coffees, you are quite literally slurping from a spoon.
Okay, I've heard about this. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
And that offered some challenges.
Right. When I first heard about that, what that meant, I was like, ooh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, yeah. But so how did you get through that? Did you get to did you kind of mentally coach yourself, or did you say, "Oh, tell your boss I'm out of here"?
A lot of the times I was curating the experience, so I found that helped when I felt a bit of control over it.
Yeah.
I could walk away. I could go grind some coffees, be by something loud.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that I think that being in some sort of control of the environment helped a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you had some optionality, and that's sometimes the most important thing, is if you can at least know that you're not trapped, that you can move around. That kind of helps. So that's cool. That's cool. And so, okay. Well, then how about outside of work? Like, what's life like for you? Living situation, that kind of stuff.
Sure. I live in a classic Philadelphia row home. Um, and luckily now I live in a very quiet neighborhood. Um, Sounds through walls really affect me. Like low bass
Yeah.
affects me. I don't need to get too much into triggers, but, so city living can be challenging sometimes because of that. But I usually have some kind of fan going. I have earplugs
Yeah.
usually at hand.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Do you have to put them on
hmm
all the
hmm
time, or is it just kind of the comfort of knowing that they're available?
It's the comfort of knowing they're there.
Well, we'll maybe talk about more about your life, but I'd be curious to kind of go rewind to go back to kind of early days for Rachel. Like, when
Mm,
did you first kind of notice it? What was going on around then?
sure. Yeah, I'll get right into it. It
Safe
definitely,
space. Yeah, let's
yeah,
bring it.
I feel that.
Most
I
people can
feel that.
relate.
It started sometime when I was around 10. Um, and two of the first things that affected me, um, that I noticed were my bus driver would
Oh.
smack on her gum. And I loved her. I would sit as close to her as possible. And I remember overnight noticing it and then not being able to be near her.
Mm,
And that made me really sad because I
mm,
loved her. So it was like this really interesting feeling
yeah.
rage for someone that really didn't do anything to me. And then, second was, my father's nose breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And, um, I've just started going to therapy and like talking through this stuff. And I realized that I would get on the bus right after my mama would have, um, some angry times with me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and then my father's breathing, he would only be around like after work. And usually those times were really tense times for my family. And, I'm starting to see a lot of connections in, um, in those things,
Mm-hmm.
um, which I guess is helpful to know where it might be coming from. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've read the book, but that's kind of where I'm at, where I've kind of made
I
similar
have.
connections. So, yeah, I can
Mm-hmm.
totally, well, I don't want to say totally
Mm-hmm.
relate, but I can kind of understand. Yeah, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
tense situations, and then you're suddenly off on going on this bus, and your nervous system is effed. And you, as a
Yeah.
child, it's hard to, your brain's making whatever connections it's trying to make. Um,
Mm-hmm.
was
Mm-hmm.
your I don't know, so I'll dive into the random things, but like, was your bus driver
Sure.
chewing gum before, this, and it
Yeah,
was
but I
just kind
never
of, yeah,
noticed
that
it.
makes sense. Yeah.
I would have a friend sitting next to me who's like chewing through an entire pack of gum. You know, you can't just have
Mm-hmm.
one piece when you're a kid. And,
Right.
it wouldn't bother me. And then all of a sudden it did.
See, that's why I don't know, I'm getting into speculation, but I don't think it's, that's why I don't think it's all about the sound. It's about the context
Mm,
and what was going on
yeah.
around. And so,
That took me a long time to be okay with. I was just like, oh no, there's just something wrong with me. Oh no, there's something wrong with my brain and I can't do anything about it. And, I feel like reading your book and, um, therapy and just some good old thinking. Um,
mm-hmm.
yeah, it's, starting to feel okay. Yeah.
I think it's like a journey, like I think probably where you're at, where I'm like, oh, I've made all these connections. I'm not going to rush into like, hey, I need to solve
hmm
misophonia. I'm like, there's enough to process here probably, and then that's kind of where you're at, sounds like, and which is a great step.
Yeah.
Most people haven't made these connections yet, and that's why I'm trying to get more people to try to talk about this stuff to maybe make this connection.
Hmm.
Um, I'm curious. I don't know, like this is specifically about misophonia. Like, were you starting to react to sounds with your family, and how were they
Hmm.
interpreting that?
Yes, it was a big challenge when I was
Mm-hmm.
younger. One, because no, no one in my life knew what was going on. Um, and I didn't know how to talk about it because I was in a home that was not okay to express
Mm,
negative feelings. Um, so there were a few times where my mother would be driving ragefully. She was a scary person to be in the car with. And she would be chewing gum and I would ask her to stop and sometimes she would spit it at me.
wow.
Yeah. So that was really hard. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that she just thought I was being a brat, but
Mm-hmm.
really it was really hard. So
Yeah.
I would just press my face against the cold glass on the window and that would feel nice.
Mm-hmm.
And, um, yeah. So my family's reaction wasn't great. It wasn't until my best friend in high school, um, she was the first one that I told that didn't think I was crazy and actually advocated for me.
That's
And
awesome.
she didn't know what it was either, but she's the one who found out and told me about it and was like, you
Okay.
should read this article. I wish I could remember the article. Um, but I was either just out of, I think I was just out of high school.
Could I ask
So
what
this
year? I
is
don't want to like.
2009.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah. So
2009.
it's probably it must have been because there wasn't a lot, right? So it must have been the New York Times
No,
article, probably.
something, but it
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh, it has a name. Wow. Yeah.
Could I ask what is your relationship like with your parents now? Because it sounds like it was quite um, wow, it was
Hmm.
quite volatile.
It
So
was
I'm just curious.
turbulent. Um, it's still challenging, but I love my parents and I feel like despite, um, I feel like my mother was dealing with, um, some serious trauma herself and did not deal with it in the proper way. And I set some really hard boundaries and it was years of work, I felt like. And if something was off, I would say something and say, hey, if it doesn't change, I'm going to leave. And then if it didn't change, I actually left.
Yeah.
And I mean, of course, that would take me being independent and having my own car and not like
Right.
being under their wing, you know? So it was really hard in high school when I was realizing like, oh, I don't need to deal with this, but I still have to.
Yeah. I
Um,
guess maybe it
yeah.
wasn't fair to me. Like jump to the present because maybe were there times that your mom was not volatile? I mean, it sounds like there must have been
Yeah.
wasn't all
She's
bad,
actually
right?
a really cool lady. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she is an interesting one. And I love her a lot. Um,
Yeah.
but she acted inappropriately and hurt me a lot. Yeah.
Was it kind of a Jekyll and Hyde? Like, did you know when
Hmm.
things were okay? Yeah. So
Yeah.
it must have been very
I think it's,
confusing then. Yeah, because you didn't
yeah,
know. Did you sometimes not know when the boundaries were at? Because I've heard this term in actually in my own
mm,
therapy of having kind of unclear or unknown boundaries that either you would step over or something would set her off. Was
hmm.
it that kind of situation?
Yes. I didn't know the boundaries because they would always change.
Mm-hmm. 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 Makes sense. Yeah.
Hmm.
What about with your dad? So you said he'd come home from work, and then was he also kind of like a little bit unpredictable at that time, or was it just the dynamics would just kind of
Mm.
like um, get a bit chaotic with everybody together?
He was very predictable.
Okay.
My dad is very steady and loving. Um, but he would be complacent. So if my mother was in one of her moods, he would either side with her and say sorry later or leave.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. Um, but talking about sounds through walls, I would listen
Oh,
to the
yes.
sounds of her
Okay.
footsteps to know what kind of mood she was in. And I don't know, if, again, like reading through your book and like thinking back on my childhood, which I really have to dig because I forget a lot. I feel like a lot of the things that affect me now are from trying to understand what my life would be like that day.
Yeah.
um, yeah.
What do you mean by what life would be like that day? Um,
I mean, her moods would change day to day,
like back then. Okay,
sometimes
gotcha.
multiple times a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
When I was a
Yeah.
child, now I keep
Right.
safe distance.
From her. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you have siblings too?
No, I
Okay.
wish.
Okay. Yeah.
I really wish
Right.
I did.
Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so interesting that you said about the footsteps and through the walls. I mean, I've talked to so many people,
Mm,
myself included, who would be like, you know, be listening for him. When am I hearing? Am I going to hear my name get yelled out from like 2 floors above, kind of thing, or our parents are arguing, that kind of stuff, where people would be, kids would be listening to, and then we don't like parts of our
that's
brain or
scary.
nervous system are trying to protect us. And
Yeah.
can I ask, you don't have to get into specifics, but the nature of possibly your mom's trauma? Do you know anything about that without, you don't have to divulge too much, but,
I know a bit. It was from her father, and he had gone through employment issues.
okay,
My mom was born in 57, so, um, he, I know, had rage issues and would physically abuse his children in life.
gotcha. Okay, yeah,
And she would never admit it to me. I've asked her and tried to talk it through with her, and she would only say that she had a happy life.
got
So
it. So I'm saying never mention even to therapy or
really
any
shoved it,
professional. Yeah,
really
yeah,
shoved
yeah,
it
yeah.
down. Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay, and well, why don't we stick to kind of a usual path? I mean, at school, like, so your best friend
Oh
was obviously
gosh.
an advocate.
Oh,
How
so
how
thankful for
was
her.
how was like other students, friends, teachers?
School was really challenging for me. I had a hard time focusing. I feel like a lot of the stuff I learned was on my own in my room because, I mean, I don't need to list everything, but like clicking sounds, clocks,
Mm-hmm.
knees, knees shaking
So the
in the
visual
corner.
triggers were starting to kind of, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, yeah, gum, of course, is a big one. Um, yeah.
And so,
Luckily, people weren't watching YouTube on their phones yet.
oh
Because
god,
that's
yeah,
bad for me too.
right, right. With on the speakerphone, eh? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Oh.
But then so you graduated from school and stuff, and you went out into the world. Did you? So I guess
Yes.
when did you leave home, and what were the circumstances around that? Was it misophonia influenced
Oh no,
moving out?
it wasn't. I went to college.
Okay, yeah,
I went to college for classical singing, and that proved to be really challenging too because you can imagine the practice rooms were really loud and clashing. There were clocks in
hmm
the rooms. So I had a really hard time
I
there
took
too.
piano lessons a few years ago, and
Oh, yeah.
I had to smother the clock under my winter jacket because it was just like
Oh no.
before the teacher came in, until I admitted it to him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, no worries," because
It never made
I
sense to
couldn't keep
me.
time. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm like, we're in music school here,
Hmm.
and we're not always playing to the clock.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah,
Yeah.
that must have been challenging, but yes. Well, how did you get through that? If you did.
Not well.
Okay.
Um, I feel like I needed a lot of decompression time after my
Mm-hmm.
classes.
Mm-hmm.
I would spend a lot of time alone in my room and feeling hopeless.
Mm.
Um, Again, you're in college, there's people listening to loud music, so I wouldn't use, I wouldn't use earplugs, I would use headphones, and I would like either blast white noise,
Right.
um, or play a soundtrack that I liked.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I had horrible sleep all through college. Um, and I really felt trapped in some
Yeah.
situations. Yeah.
Did you meet any other? I mean, did you any friends like your best friend in college, or um, I would, I would,
Mm,
I would. I'm curious because when I'm thinking in music, people be extra sensitive to sound. Maybe, and maybe you'd be have
yeah.
more chance of finding somebody who might be able to sympathize. Did that happen?
Oh, it did not
No. Okay.
for a long time.
Okay.
I didn't talk about it with a lot of people
Mm.
unless we were really close. And most people that I did tell would say stuff along the lines of like,
Uh
well,
oh.
you could get over it. Like, just don't let it bother you. Um, yeah. My
This
grandmom,
is in this is in music.
oh,
This is in like an art. Uh, yeah, you would think that there would
yeah,
be a little bit more empathy than you know
yeah, yeah.
auto mechanics or something like that.
Oh
Yeah.
gosh. In classical concerts, the poor patrons who are paying for their tickets, I would be so upset when I start to hear the crinkly sound,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
that hard candy. I'm like,
Yep.
okay, at least it's temporary. That's what I would say. It's not gum. It's temporary.
Right. Right. I
Yeah.
would. Yeah. I always ask people who perform like how did that work and how did you keep your concentration if you did or you must have or like
Mm,
maybe you have I would expect you would have to like the opposite of decompression you'd have to kind of like really psych yourself up
mm. Oh
and
yeah.
like I
Yeah.
try to do is I try to convince myself if I know I'm in a situation just tell myself in advance no one's gonna attack you jump on you or
Yeah.
yell at you now that we know that
Yeah.
it might be related to you know
Mm.
what it
Mhm.
possibly is just remind ourselves that we have that distance. Did you
Mhm.
have that kind of language or ability to do that at that point, or it was just like
Not yet.
roll the dice? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I would just be like, all right, here we go. Who
Mm-hmm.
knows what I'm walking into? I would bite my tongue a lot to
Gotcha.
like
Okay.
just kind of like get through it.
Yep.
Um, Sometimes I would leave and cry in the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but uh, yeah, it really wasn't until maybe I was like in my late 20s that I really started to feel grounded. And when I started to heal some of my childhood trauma and learn some meditative practices, um, and breathing practices, then I was able to find comfort in some of those situations. Um, so yeah, I wish I knew back then what would help.
Yeah. So
Um, yeah.
how did you maybe speak to like when did you start to make those realizations? Was it well? Okay. Sorry, I'm gonna jump all over
Mm.
the place, but
Yeah, sure.
when did you well I guess when did you start to go to therapy? I'm assuming you start to go to therapy maybe for
Just
non-misophonia
recently.
stuff. Oh, just recently. Okay, okay.
Yes. Yeah, I just started therapy. I should have been going to therapy for so long.
As most of us, as most people.
I've needed
Right.
it, but now I'm in a place I like have a really great job and I'm finally making good enough money to pay for therapy. Um, so that helps. Um, I started going to therapy because a really traumatic thing happened to my family. I don't
Okay.
know if I need to go into it.
No,
I
no,
feel
no.
comfortable, but it's like, it's
Yeah.
really bad.
Yeah. Don't
Um,
worry about it.
it was like a big wake up call, for my
Hmm.
family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, uh, I started going to therapy for that. And then I was like, hey, I also am dealing with this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But so you didn't go. Obviously, you didn't go for specifically for misophonia, but
Mm-mm, mm-mm. We're tagging that in.
so actually, yeah. Since we're on the subject with your therapist now, does your therapist even know about misophonia, or did they know about misophonia when you went in? Or
No.
okay.
Um, no, but I recommended Sounds Like Misophonia. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, you should read this book. I don't know if she will, um, but she's like, I love learning about these things. I want to help you. And she immediately was like, it's from your childhood. And I was like, no, it's not. And then I was like, okay, maybe it is.
What
And,
I'm curious, what made
uh,
her? Did she? I mean, obviously she knew about your past, and
well,
or did she kind of like? Did it seem like she just kind of like, like
she
I don't know.
knew. She just instinctually
Okay,
knew
instinctually knew. Yeah.
because I was like, well, it's like a thing that's happening in my brain. And she was just like, yes. And trauma reframes the way that your brain works.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And so I was like, oh, I guess that makes sense.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Astute observation. I mean, I would make
Yeah.
that connection as well. Okay, so you recently, I mean, has she given you
Mm.
any potential tips or anything, or anything novel that you
Um,
hadn't read or thought of before?
Mostly that statement.
Mm-hmm.
It was like almost like
Validating.
permission to really dive into what could have started it. Honestly, Sounds Like Misophonia is really helping me a lot. I actually used it, one of the tips today.
Yeah,
Um,
do tell.
yeah.
What did you use?
It actually really helped. I was in a workout class and this super friendly person was standing next to me, smacking on their gum. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to stare daggers into your head. And, I remembered a tip in your book that says, to, like reframe the sound. So I was thinking that they were walking through some mud and sloshing around, and that helped to like change like where the sound might be coming from.
Right, right. Yeah, that's definitely in the
Yeah.
book. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. It didn't hurt the sting, or
Right.
it didn't change the sting of like the initial like, oh, that sound bothers me, or that
Yeah,
sound is causing my heart rate to go up.
but it let you get
It
back
helped me
to
cope.
normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been trying to do that.
Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great feedback. That's great feedback.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you did mention like some breathing tips or exercises. Obviously,
Mm,
sounds like
like
you
centering.
learned those before starting therapy. I'm curious, kind of like
Yes.
how you
Long before.
discovered things like that, and was it for misophonia or just kind of other issues?
Um, I guess it wasn't specifically for misophonia. It
Yeah.
was to find peace. Um, yeah, I would do yoga and meditate for a long time and find this really calm place. And I remember when I first started doing that on a regular basis, I found myself reacting a little bit less. And I was like, am I healed? Like, what happened? And then slowly
Hallelujah. You've
things,
opened your doors.
woo!
Hallelujah. Yeah, yeah. Right.
Um, but no, I wasn't healed. And when stress comes and goes, the ebbs and flows of life, um, my reactions to certain sounds will, intensify.
Hmm.
Um, but I am able to breathe through it more now than I was able to before. I don't feel as hopeless.
Yeah.
Um,
I also didn't realize the importance of breathing until recently, even though I've heard it many times over my life. I guess it is
mm,
it is a key thing. It's not just
Hmm.
about mindfulness. It's I don't know. It's consciously breathing in and out,
Hmm.
properly does help. Um,
Oh yeah.
but another things like you
And
said, like stress and sleep. Like if we don't have those, we're obviously more likely to kind of go off on sounds.
hmm
It doesn't cure it, but it kind of handicaps us if any of those are kind of off.
hmm
So
hmm
yeah, I didn't
hmm
realize that until not too long ago either. Um,
hmm
do you find have you picked up kind of your I don't know any of the a lot of us have like comorbid conditions, some maybe anxiety. We're not. I'm curious if you've I don't know, do you feel your mom's anger issues have kind of like come into you? Are you do you also tend to have a
mm
similar kind of reaction to I don't know things in life?
mm. Um, I've tried really hard not to be like her.
Oh, but that part
Um,
of her, yeah,
that part of her.
yeah.
I guess I am part of her, so I'm gonna be
Yeah.
like her a little bit.
Well,
Um,
you said she was pretty
she has
cool,
good
so I'm
parts too.
assuming that you've yeah.
Um, but I do feel anger, and I feel like what I learned from my mom is to pause and like love that part of myself and try to understand why before I react to it.
Wow, this
Um,
is heavy. This is deep. This is really important.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really hard because you want to like react immediately when you feel something is unjust, whether it is or not. Um, but I saw, and I mean, I experienced the way that it affects people when you don't stop and pause first. And I think that practicing that over and over again also helps with my reactions to certain sounds. Um, because I really love, I mean, this definitely comes from being abused in my childhood, but like, I want people to feel good and be happy around me. I want everything to be okay. So when I do feel anger, I try my darndest not to
Hmm.
react in that moment.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah. No, that's no, that's understandable, important, and I think I'm kind of the same way. Do you feel like I the term HSP comes up a lot, where people are like we feel like because I think I'm at least borderline HSP, where I feel like I'm reading the room a lot and looking for those emotions of everybody else and
oh yeah,
trying to make sure that everybody is. If I even sense that there's gonna be a disagreement, I can kind of feel like I can sense it way in advance, and I'm trying to make sure everything's okay. And then if things are not, then I feel like extra anxious. You know what I mean? I don't know. Do you? Sounds like you
absolutely,
might kind of relate to that. Yeah,
100%. Yes, so much.
yeah.
Um, I read The Four Agreements recently. Have you
I
ever
haven't
read
heard of
that
that.
book?
No, I don't think I've
Oh,
heard of
it's
that.
so wonderful. I wish I had it near me so I could remember the author's name.
We'll Google
I
it
feel
or
bad.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll Google it. But one of the four agreements is to, well, one, not to take things personally, and to two, not make assumptions. Um, and those are really hard
Mm-hmm.
because I walk into a room and it feels weird and I assume that I had something to do with it or I could fix it.
Mm-hmm.
um, and, yeah, I definitely attune to the person that is going through a hard time
Yep.
or could be a danger. Um, yeah, yeah.
Do you I don't know, well, I don't know if and how much this relates to you, but a lot of us feel a lot of guilt and shame with misophonia, especially how we may have reacted with those death glares to people that
Oh
probably
gosh.
didn't mean anything. It could be family
Yeah.
members, it could be friends. Ah, it sounds like that's happened, and it's kind of built up, maybe.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, I feel a lot of guilt around misophonia, and even if I ask nicely, like, hey, this sound is causing this feeling in me, and I'm wondering if you could make this alteration. And even then, I'm like, oh gosh, I can't believe I have to ask someone that I love who is nourishing their body to change
Mm,
what they're doing.
mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. Unfortunately, I love feeding people. I
Right,
love hosting people. And every time I'm like, gosh, I hope they chew with their mouth closed.
right.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does that? How does that? I guess how does that go? Do you have to do that a lot? And have you ever had a bad reaction?
Um, Again, when I'm in control of the situation and I'm busy, then I'm usually okay.
Right.
Um, if I am hosting, I can walk away to the kitchen and be busy doing something.
Even say at your home, not the work
Yeah.
kind of stuff, like amongst friends. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah,
Work
yeah.
is different. I practice a lot of steady breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it upsets me when someone is, having a work conversation on their phone or watching videos in a
Yeah.
public space. I feel like that's just rude in general,
Mm-hmm.
without feeling affected by it, but, um, that gets to me. Or slurping sounds.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I
yeah, yeah.
work in a coffee shop, people are drinking a hot beverage.
Right,
But
right.
again, I love, it's such a contradicting experience because I love creating that cozy environment for
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
So that's interesting. I don't know.
it's
I don't
interesting.
know if you get this feeling, but I usually kind of forget almost that I have misophonia until it hits,
Oh
because
gosh.
we don't like
Oh
to think
no.
about it, and we do like the world.
Yeah.
We like
Yes,
sounds.
exactly.
You like creating cozy environment. It's almost a
Yeah.
Groundhog's Day, where I feel like every day I'm like,
Yeah.
it's kind of a, oh yeah, ooh, cool, this is awesome, and then all of a sudden, what? Oh no, and then I forget again, and the next morning I wake up.
Oh no. Um, yeah, I don't like to think about it, but I'm trying
Mm-hmm.
to think about it more recently.
Mm-hmm.
Like being okay that it's part of my life.
Well, I think it's a big step to know where it potentially came from, because what I try to do, have talked to my therapist, is like think of that child from back in the day and soothe that
Mm.
child as an adult. That's a big part of many different
Mm.
modalities. So if you
Mhm.
can do that regularly, I think that's part of what can rewire the brain over the long term.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
not an easy thing.
It's hard
The first
work.
step is,
Yeah.
the first step is kind of where I think you and
Yeah.
I are at. But
Mm. Yeah. It's really hard work. I remember like going online and being like, what could help misophonia? And one of the things was like, don't socialize. And I was like, that can't be it.
right,
Like, just
right.
don't go be around people. I love people.
It would help, but it's not
Yeah, it
practical.
would
Yeah,
definitely, yeah, this is not the answer.
right.
I did, I was looking, I mean, for so long I was like, man, I wish there were like special hearing aids that would
Mm,
like block out certain frequencies. And I looked into it and there are hearing aids that are made for people with tinnitus,
mm,
that have like a low volume, like brown noise or something playing. And I guess you can do that with headphones, but, I don't know.
you
Anybody
can get
out there
those.
making these things?
You can get those
make it for misophonia.
prescribed for misophonia from audiologists. There's a company called
Oh,
Widex, and they do that stuff. And then supposedly the audiologist kind of tunes the frequency and
yeah.
the volume. I mean, personally,
Mm,
I don't think it's much different than, like you said, playing different
headphones. Yeah.
brown noise or white noise through
Mm,
your headphones and adjusting the volume yourself. But
mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what audiologists will do.
Hmm.
Again, it's totally different than kind of analyzing your childhood kind of thing. But
Well,
it's
yeah, that's important too. But I guess for dealing with it in certain situations,
yeah,
like I want to go to concerts and I feel like I avoid them because of the lack of control in my environment.
people talking or
Um, yeah,
the sound
talking,
system.
eating
Yeah,
candy.
yeah.
Yeah,
Classical concerts obviously different than like My Bloody Valentine
yeah,
or a rock concert or
yeah.
something like that.
Very different. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, the last time I went to the orchestra was a nightmare. You're in tight seats, people are bobbing their
Yep.
heads. That was a really hard situation. And again, I just had to run off to the bathroom and cry for a minute,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I felt so overwhelmed.
Yep.
But I miss going to concerts, and I definitely avoid them.
Is there anything else you avoid? People, types of events, kind of things
um,
that you wish you could go
yes.
to or see more of?
Certain kinds of restaurants, if I know it's going to be super quiet. Um, I got those like calmer ear plug
Right. Okay.
things.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
supposed to redirect the sound or something. They maybe have a placebo effect. I don't know. I still feel affected by sounds if I put them in, but I feel like maybe I'm taking a measure. But mostly I just go to like slightly louder restaurants, somewhere that I
Hmm.
know is like maybe spinning vinyl and focuses on the music.
Right.
Um,
Right. Right. Are there any that's has misophonia kind of like come between you and friends or family in terms of like I will not, or I'll think twice before spending time with this person?
Absolutely. It has affected so many of my relationships. Like if I know someone's going to be chewing gum all the time, I just will not hang out with them.
Yeah.
I can't.
Do you
And
try to first
sometimes,
talk to them, or you just
yeah,
like, I'm not, it's not worth it? Okay.
I try. If it's a friend that I feel like I really want to develop a relationship with, I'll try to talk about it. But sometimes I don't even try, and I'm just like, all right, this is not going to work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, and it's really sad.
What about like what about family events now when you get together for like if you get
Oh,
together for
we don't
Christmas,
get together.
Thanksgiving? Okay.
Um, I guess so. I grew up with a big family. My mom had five brothers and uh, two sisters,
Okay.
and events were all. It's a big Italian family, and there would be a lot of food. All my uncles ate super loud. But
Mm.
again, it would be a really loud environment anyway. Um, so yeah, I would kind of just like go off by myself and eat
Yep.
alone with no like explanation.
Mm-hmm.
But that extended family does not get together anymore. And most recently, my parents have actually become sensitive to misophonia. They, not like they have it themselves, but like
Okay.
helping
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
and like they'll make an effort to put music on, um, which is really nice. Um, and my mom's actually, uh, very recently started researching it and was like, oh, this is like actually a thing. You're not just being a brat.
Yeah.
Um,
What
yeah,
caused
so
the
that
shift?
meant a lot.
Was it doing the research, or was it other things that happened that caused the
Um,
shift?
I definitely think that one, setting boundaries, I feel like made her respect me as like
Mm-hmm.
an adult
Mm-hmm.
human being.
Yeah.
And she started to like genuinely listen to me. Um, so that setting boundaries really worked for my relationship. Again, it took years, but um, yeah, that worked. And then also, um, this traumatic event that happened in my family, I feel like really reframed her brain and made
Okay.
her a little bit more sensitive.
In general,
Um,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I think that she started to be like, cause I would tell her about it, be like, it's a real thing. You read about it. There's information.
Mm-hmm.
And she finally did. Um,
Well,
yeah.
that's promising. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Have you talked
yeah,
to
it's
her about,
interesting.
have you made the connection with her to kind of these things that you talked about, or that's not even, not talking about that? Yeah.
No. Um, she, I feel like the times where she gets out of control, she's not lucid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's almost, I don't know. I don't know if it's a healthy thing to do, but I don't talk about my childhood with her
Yeah.
and how it
Yeah.
affected me.
Mm-hmm.
Because she will try to turn it on me, and that
Mm-hmm.
just ends up
Yeah.
re-traumatizing me.
Yep.
So I'm just like, okay, I will work on this and then also try at the same time to have quality time with her now because she's a different person.
Mm-hmm.
She still does have outbursts that I hear about from my dad, but she, again, because of boundary setting, really tries to rein it in when I'm around. Um, yeah,
That makes
yeah,
sense. I mean, you don't have to do everything at once. Think step
yeah,
by step.
exactly. It's like, you know what? I don't really need for her to apologize for that
Mm-hmm.
because I don't think she had control over herself. She had control over getting help, but like, um, yeah, I don't need that in my healing process.
So I don't. You mentioned, I don't know, friendships, relationships.
Hmm.
How do you want to? Has that affected kind
Oh.
of like you know, that that side
Hmm.
of your life, personal life, I guess?
Yes. Yes. I was in a relationship for a long time, with a jazz musician,
I was
and
gonna say a musician.
another
Yeah.
musician. Yeah. I'm no longer in a relationship with him and am in a new one. And, in my previous relationship, he, oh my goodness, he was such a mouth wide open eater. And
Mm.
he would try to,
You told him about the
yeah, I
misophonia.
told him,
Yeah.
he knew about it. He tried to be sensitive to it, but he's just like just living his life and like would do
Jazz
his
musician.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just bebopping around.
Just all
Um,
syncopation and yeah.
yeah, yeah, and tapping and
Yeah.
yeah, tippity tapping and everything. Um, and I'd be like, please, please be quiet. Um, but, uh, it kind of works because we never spent time together. He lived his life at night and went to gigs, and I worked in the morning. So I feel like we were always ships passing in the night. So like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I didn't really have to work on anything with him because we were never eating together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I left that relationship and am in a really healthy one now. And we spend a lot of time together, and meal times are tough, um, because it really makes him sad that he could be causing, pain for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it hurts me to have to tell him when something's bothering me. And, he doesn't understand when certain things will be okay, because again, the ebbs and flows of life, the amount of stress that I
Right.
feel at a certain time will change when certain sounds affect me. And he's just like, what are the rules? I'll follow them, but I don't know. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell him sometimes.
Yeah.
Which I think is part of the reason. I mean, it's why I bought your book. It's
Mm-hmm.
why I'm here right now. It's
Mm-hmm.
because I really am trying to like do all the things I possibly can to, I mean, maybe not make it go away, but like feel a sense of control. Um, or be okay not being in control, I guess is the better thing to say. Um,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's no magic bullets. Uh, where I'm at, it's like, I think taking um, some of the examples in the book, the ones that can, not every example, not every tip will
Hmm.
work for everybody, but some things
Hmm.
will work for people, in the moment. And
Hmm.
then working on, I think like you're doing is kind of like trying to find the links to the past if there are any, and trying to
Hmm.
heal that, I think, is a big part of it. It's not
Hmm.
going to happen right away, but I think these are important first steps.
Hmm.
And yeah, having the optionality, if just understanding that, you can walk away and come back.
Hmm. Hmm.
If you're
Yeah.
not de-stressed in the moment, at least go away, decompress, and come back. Like, I think society
Hmm.
should give us the space to be able to do that. I don't think it's
I think
in
society should
the
get rid of gum.
that too. Yeah, yeah,
Gum
yeah.
is illegal in my perfect
In
world.
Singapore, it is.
Is it really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
I
don't know if you
didn't know
remember. Are
that.
you from the in the there was a I digress, but this is an interesting digression. But I think it was in the '90s when there was a famous case of an American who was chewing gum in Singapore and he got caned, and there was like a big international incident.
No.
It was a slow news year, and
Oh no,
so
I feel bad that he might have been hurt, but that's kind of what I want to do when I see someone chewing gum. So,
right,
um,
right. Yeah, but short of that, I mean, the things we talked about, I think, are good steps. Um,
don't do that. Um,
yeah.
wow, that's maybe I need to go and move there.
Hey, maybe we should. Yeah, maybe
Hmm.
we should. Maybe I should host
Start a
these
society.
1 week retreats to Singapore or
Yeah.
something. Misophonia podcast retreats. We're coming up to about an hour. I think obviously we've covered
Yeah.
a lot of stuff.
Wow.
Went deep, and
Yeah.
hopefully this was
Yeah.
helpful. I don't have like, because I don't have like, I'm fascinated because I don't know. Yeah, I think you've made some of the same
Mm.
realizations that I've made, and I think it's validating to
Mm.
me personally, and I hope it's somewhat validating to
Hmm.
you.
Very much. It's really nice to talk to somebody that understands. I have run into a few people who are like, oh, I think I have that,
Right.
and they've never heard of it, but they're like, oh, sounds bother me too. And I'm like, does it cause rage? Um,
Fight or flight, or
but
hijacks your
fight or
mind,
flight,
and yeah.
exactly. Oh my
Or
gosh, fight or
freeze.
flight.
Sometimes it's freeze. Sometimes I just don't know what to do.
Absolutely. Yes.
So,
Yeah. All of the above. It hurts a lot. It's really, not great for your body, but it's really been nice talking to you about it. It feels very comfortable, and, I'm really grateful for what you're doing here.
I
Yeah.
no, I appreciate that, and you're not
Mhm.
alone. And when you were telling your story,
Hmm.
honestly, I don't know if you've heard every episode, but there are a few people that
Not
have very
every.
similar stories. So yeah, I'm
Mm.
happy to kind of like rattle off some names after,
Oh,
um,
I love
because
that.
those
Yeah.
those I think those stories would be good to hear, and also you can always reach out to those people, because
Oh, wow.
if you want to talk to people, we seem to be a pretty tight community. I've made a lot of connections that way. So,
I would love that.
well, Rachel,
Yeah.
thanks for coming on. This was super enlightening, validating. Yeah,
Mm.
I'm glad that the books helped,
Oh my gosh, so much.
and I'm
Yeah.
glad that you're learning these things in therapy, because I think these
Hmm.
are super important that I wish more people knew about.
A long, long time I feel like I'm I'm going to be spending diving into this stuff, but it's so worth it. It's a lot of hard work, but it's worth it for sure.
All right. Well, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again, Rachel. Thanks for sharing very important parts of your childhood and life that I know are going to resonate with many of us. You can hit me up by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or go to the website misophoniapodcast.com. It's even easier just to send a message on Instagram at Misophonia Podcast. Follow there, and on Twitter or X, it's Misophonia Show. Support the show by visiting the Patreon at patreon.com/Misophonia Podcast. Theme music, as always, is by Moby. And until next week, wishing you peace and quiet.